How about now? There we go. Well, good morning. It is Sunday morning. Sounds a little loud. All right. A lot loud. All right, we started studying the life of Abraham. Started studying the life of Abraham last week. Yeah, a little louder. A little louder. Started studying the life of Abraham last week, and one of the things that we pointed out about Abraham was one of the greatest men of faith that ever lived. And when you think about the kind of faith that he had, it's exhibited by the fact that every time God gave him a promise, he believed it. Every time God gave Abraham a command, he obeyed it. But we also pointed out that Abraham was not a perfect person. And Abraham has some difficulty telling the truth. And this is sort of a common problem amongst humanity, right? And when we're involved in a lie, what kind of trouble tends to follow our lies? Remembering. Why is it so hard to remember when we're lying? You can give different people different versions, and what's the other thing that goes with a lie? When I start to tell a lie,
you have to tell more lies.
Why do I have to tell more lies? To keep the first lie in line. And one of the challenges with lying, when I start to tell multiple lies, is each lie relates to the lie before, doesn't it? Many, many years ago, when I was a young whippersnapper and I worked for the city of Indianapolis, I was the Marion County Poor Relief Hearing Officer. Now, you may not know that Marion County even has a Poor Relief Hearing Officer, but one of the things I learned about Marion County is there are 9 townships in Marion County. Everybody know that? And Indy, who's your people being creative? What do you think we call the township in the middle of all the other townships? Center Township. And a road on the county line we might call, how about County Line Road? Or a road that's 11 trolley stops from downtown, that could be Stop 11 Road. See, these are things that are not lies. They're easy to keep up with because they're true. They make sense, right? But lies often don't make sense. So I'm the Poor Relief Hearing Officer, and the best way I can describe a Poor Relief Hearing Officer in Marion County is if you ever saw the show Night Court with Harry Anderson, except I didn't have a bull. There's no bull. It's me and the people that are making their claims. And each of these 9 townships administer poor relief. Now, a few of the townships had a little problem administering poor relief because they had no poor people. So it's a little bit like, you know, how the Flintstones, Fred and Barney would go off to the volunteer fire department, but the whole town was built out of stone, and the wives never caught on. In the year or so that I was a Poor Relief Hearing Officer for Marion County, there were 6 townships. I never heard a single case. But Center Township, I heard a fair number of cases. And one of the cases I heard had to do with residency. To draw poor relief, you've got to be a resident of the township. And so I had this gal, and you're allowed to ask questions from the bench as a Poor Relief Hearing Officer. So I started asking her a number of questions about Center Township. And I'm asking them in fairly rapid succession. And one of the questions I asked was, where did you go to high school? Now, she's told me that she's lived in Center Township her whole life, and her response was, Bloomington High. Well, the people from Center Township thought that was a hilarious answer. But as you know, I'm not from around here. So I had to ask the exciting follow-up question to the trustees, which was, is there a Bloomington High School in Center Township? Well, what happened? She started telling lies, and the lies got away from her, and she did not really see where I was going. I had another case once upon a time that was about work. You had to do a certain amount of work to draw poor relief. And the township trustee claimed that this guy was just laying on the floor and sleeping when he should be working. He claimed that as a devout follower of Allah, he was praying towards the holy cities 5 times a day or whatever it was. So I asked him, naturally, probably the question you would have thought of, which is, are you a Shiite or a Sunni Muslim? And he goes, like some of you might be doing now. He goes, Sunni. And I said, and when you pray, towards which three holy cities, as a devout follower of Islam, are you required to pray toward? He's like, and to which I said, I'll tell you what, buddy, if you can name just one of the three holy cities of Islam, you'll win this case. And he looked at me and he said, you know the answer to this, don't you? I said, yeah, I do know the answer to it, but I want to know, do you know the answer to it? Well, he couldn't name a single one of the three holy cities to which all devout Muslims are required to pray, which are, if you're going to go on Jeopardy, this will help you later, Mecca, Medina, and Jerusalem. Those are the three holy cities in Islam. Jerusalem is the third holiest city in Islam. It's one of the reasons why we have all this trouble in the Middle East that has no end in sight. All right, when we tell lies, we often don't see where the lies are going. And we have in the case of Abraham, in Genesis 12 and 10, there was a famine in the land. Abram went down to Egypt and to live there for a time because the famine was severe in the land. And it came about when he was approaching Egypt, he said to his wife Sarah, see now, I know that you are a beautiful woman. When the Egyptians see you, they'll say, this is his wife, and they will kill me, but they will let you live. This is sort of a puzzling statement in itself, isn't it? Please say that you are my sister so that it may go well for me because of you and that I may live on account of you. And it came about when Abram entered Egypt and the Egyptians saw the woman was very beautiful, Pharaoh's officials saw her and praised her to Pharaoh. And the woman was taken into Pharaoh's house. Therefore he treated Abram well for her sake, and he gave him sheep and oxen, male donkeys, male servants, female servants. She had to be some good-looking woman, didn't she? Now, I don't know if you've ever thought of this, but have you ever wondered why it was such a big deal that his wife was such a good-looking woman? Why would she so stand out?
Fair skin.
Fair skin? She's from Ur of the Chaldees, right? So I don't know how fair the skin is. When we think in our culture about what makes somebody beautiful, what qualities do we look for? What? Sweet spirit? No, that's not in the top 10.
Something different that makes her look exotic, usually.
The outside appearance. I just came back from 12 days in London. What are British people famous for? Bad teeth. Why do they have bad teeth? No, it's not from drinking tea all the time. Why do they have bad teeth in the United Kingdom? The United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland, the official name. They don't have good dental care. Why don't you have good dental care in England? It's not covered by the government, and what do we know about dental care? It's expensive. I never saw a dentist until I was 17 years old. I asked my parents when I was like 13, shouldn't I be going to the dentist occasionally? And my dad was like, are your teeth hurting? No. Well, why would you go to the dentist? So go back to the time of Abraham. What kind of dental care do you think they had? Zero. What do we know about teeth?
They need care.
They need care. Can you be born with great teeth? Yes, you can. Right? I was born with great teeth. I never had braces. I never needed braces. I don't know what the percentage of the population is, but you take something just as simple as bad teeth. You could have a very, very beautiful woman, and if she opens her mouth and her teeth are sticking out every which way, what do you think? She's not so good looking. What else determines beauty in our culture? Weight. Weight wasn't so much of a problem for them. Weight wasn't so much of a problem for my generation, right, when people were younger, because what controls weight? Activity and how much food you can take in, right? They don't really have a weight problem in those days any more than we did in this country if you go back 50 years ago. What else? What do we think of when we think of female beauty? What do we think of? Hair, right? And typically, Clairol is not what makes your hair great, right? Typically, what makes your hair great? Genetics, right? Genetics. Now, if you've got average hair, we've got hair care products. We've got all kinds of things that can be applied. There are beauty shops. There are things that we can do that move the needle. What else? Height? Yeah. Clear skin. Like when I was a kid, there were often people with really, really bad acne. You hardly ever see anybody with bad acne in our culture anymore. Why? Drugs, right? There are things that they have that treat that problem. There's nothing like that in Sarah's time. What if your nose looks bad? It looks bad. How many of us remember Danny Thomas? What kind of a nose did Danny have? Substantial. Why did his daughter Marlo look so pretty? She had surgery, right? We live in a culture where if people are not as beautiful as they want to be, there's a lot of stuff we can do about it. We can send people with bad teeth to dentists. We can get people's noses fixed. There are all kinds of surgical procedures that we use to enhance people's beauty. But Sarah is living in a culture where none of that is going on. So if you're incredibly good looking, that's an incredibly rare thing. And I'm saying all this to say we want to sort of understand, why is this something that Abram is so worried about? Aren't there lots of beautiful women in Egypt? And the answer is no. It's an incredibly rare thing for people to have all of the accoutrements that go with what we think of as beauty in our culture. Good teeth, good hair, good skin, good physique, good body, good all the things we look for. And oh, by the way, what kind of cosmetics do you think they had? The Avon lady was knocking on Abraham's door. Is Sarah in? I've got some products I want to show. No! They have very little in the way of cosmetics, and much of what they have doesn't really enhance people's appearance. So it's a rare thing. So here's Abraham with this incredibly beautiful wife in a culture where that's an incredible rarity. And guess what? As soon as he gets to Egypt, what do people notice? His beautiful wife. And so he had told her, say you're my sister. Now let's just sort of take this lie to the next step. Did Pharaoh believe that Sarah was his sister? Yeah. Did it solve any of the problems that Abraham thought it was going to solve? No. In fact, it did what? Created more. This is what lying does, right? This is what lying does. We go down the rabbit trap. We don't remember the lies that we told. We've got to tell extra lies to try to fix the first lie that we told that goes to the second. There's no end to it. And why is it that Abraham wants her to tell this particular lie? What's his motivation?
He was scared he'd be killed.
He's worried about himself. Is he thinking about Sarah? Sarah, here's a great lie. This is going to make your life better. Here's what you're going to do. Here's the plan, honey. No. He's worried about one guy. Right? This is also the nature of lying, right? Why is lying such a prevalent thing in our culture? Why is it such a prevalent part of our lives at times?
Because it affects everybody around.
Well, it affects everybody around, but why do I want to tell a lie?
Self-preservation.
Self-preservation, which is really ultimately what? I think I'm going to do what by lying? I'm going to make my life better. I'm going to solve some sort of problem that I have that's going to make my life better. There was a minister named J.W. McGarvey who was a teacher at a school called College of the Bible. And he used to lecture once a year all of the students in chapel on the topic of lying. And one of the things that he would say to his students was, I'm sure that none of you would ever lie unless you got caught in a very tight spot. Right? You would never tell a lie. You would never do the wrong thing unless you got caught in a very tight spot. Well, why? How does that happen to us?
Because our mind works in such a way that it becomes problem solving instead of
Our mind becomes problem solving, and we think that by telling that lie that we're going to tell, it's going to solve a particular problem for us. Abraham's not thinking about Sarah. He's not thinking about Pharaoh. He's not thinking about anybody in this situation except himself, even though he's this great man of faith. And they treat Abram well. I mean, it shows their heart's in the right place. But it says, the Lord struck Pharaoh and his house with great plagues because of Sarah, Abram's wife. And Pharaoh called Abram and said, what is it you've done to me? Why did you not tell me that she was your wife? Why did you say she's my sister, so that I took her for myself as a wife? Now then, here is your wife. Take her and go. And Pharaoh commanded his men concerning him, and they escorted him away, his wife, and all that belonged to him. Pharaoh, appears to have been acting from good faith. What do we learn from this as Christians?
Lying never solves a problem.
Lying never solves a problem, right? It makes problems worse. Craig?
There's also some fear here,
Fear.
which, like you said, life, you're in a tough spot, right?
Right, that's right.
Trust in the Lord. So he was afraid first, and then he did come up with a lie to deal with his fear.
Who do we know is going to protect Abram? God. And what do we see by the lie that's being told? There's a lie. Even though he's the greatest man of faith that ever lived, in this particular situation, he's not acting out of faith, right? And it should remind us, that this is the human condition. No human being is perfect. We all make mistakes. We all get in very tight situations where sometimes without even thinking, we're going to tell a lie to try to solve a problem for us. And Craig's 100% right. It's out of fear. He didn't want to be killed. But he's not really thought this situation through very well. And then, of course, we move down to Genesis chapter 20, verses 1 to 18, and we have Abraham going to the Negev and settled between Kadesh and Shur. This is Genesis 20, verse 1. And Abraham said to his wife Sarah, she is my sister. This is what she tells Abimelech, the king of Gerar. And so they sent men and took Sarah. So, she is, obviously, a very good-looking woman. It sort of reminds me, many years ago, we were teaching about Samson and Delilah. And, of course, Delilah is very attractive, and she tells lie after lie after lie to Samson, and he falls for them over and over and over again. And there was a 10-year-old kid listening to all this, and he said, I got to see a picture of that woman. She was attractive, beautiful, in a time when there just are not a lot of beautiful people. And so Abimelech, the king of Gerar, sent men and took Sarah, but God came to Abimelech in a dream that night and said, behold, you're a dead man because of the woman whom you've taken, for she is married. And Abimelech had not come near her. And he said, Lord, will you kill a nation, even though blameless? Did he himself not say to me, she is my sister? And she herself said, he is my brother. In the integrity of my heart and the innocence of my hands, I've done this. Then God said to him, yes, I know the integrity of your heart, that you've done it. And I also kept you from sinning against me. Therefore, I did not let you touch her. Now then, return the man's wife, for he is a prophet, and he will pray for you, and you will live. But if you do not return her, know that you will certainly die, and all who are yours. So, here's somebody who seems even more a person of integrity than Pharaoh. And he's been deceived again by this lie. And then notice how Abraham tries to justify what he's done. When he's asked about it, Abimelech says to Abraham, what have you encountered and why have you done this thing? And he said, because I thought, surely there's no fear of God in this place. They will kill me because of my wife. Because she actually is my sister, the daughter of my father, but not the daughter of my mother. And she became my wife. So now he's got the great justification, which is what?
Didn't really tell a lie.
I didn't really tell a lie. At the worst case, it's a half lie, right? I didn't really tell a lie. Now, we live in a whole culture that has a whole industry about parsing the truth out, right? So one of the first things that's important for us to understand as Christians is what is a lie. And a lie has nothing to do with the technicality of whether what I'm saying is true. It doesn't matter that she was his half-sister, because what he told Abimelech was told with the intent to do what? Deceive. It's told with the intent to deceive. I can tell the absolute 100% truth to you, And if I tell you the truth with the intent to deceive, I've lied. Right? If I tell you the truth, in other words, if every word I tell you is 100% true, but I'm telling you the truth with the intent to deceive, I've told you a lie. My father used to illustrate this to me when I was a child by telling me a story of two little girls. And they were both selling lemonade, one for a nickel and one for 2 cents. And a man went up to the girl that was selling lemonade for a nickel and said, "Why is your lemonade a nickel and hers is just two cents?" And the little girl smiled sweetly and said, "A cat didn't fall in my lemonade." True, 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 but told with the intent to deceive, right? And we've seen this sort of thing, in our culture over and over and over again, where people of all ilks, I don't want to throw politicians under the bus by themselves, but when you start to say things like, it depends on what the meaning of is, no, it doesn't. It depends on what's my intent when I speak. Is my intent to tell the truth, or is it my intent to deceive? I don't have to parse words, I don't have to pull out a dictionary, and I don't have to consult lawyers. The truth is a very powerful and potent thing. And here we find Abraham with this business of being worried about nothing. This is the other thing. God's going to take care of Abram. And even if he had not believed it completely, wouldn't he have seen it with what happens with Pharaoh? Why is he telling the same lie twice? There's no percentage in that. And the answer is, when we're afraid, we do things that are not logical. Fear always drives us in ways that are not logical. This is why in the New Testament we're taught that perfect love casts out fear. If I love Jesus the way that I should, what's going to happen to fear in my life? It's going to go away. Abram has this predisposition. And when you follow the family of Abraham, what do we see happening when it comes to this particular sin?
Generational.
It becomes generational because children model what? They model their parents' behavior. And so we're going to find out that Isaac does what? Says his wife is his sister too. Where do you think he came up with that? And then, of course, what does Jacob do? He wants the blessing, and how does he get the blessing? He deceives his father. He pretends to be his brother. And then what happens to at least 10 of the 12 sons of Jacob when they want to get rid of their little brother Joseph? What do they tell their father? Dad, we couldn't stand that kid. He was ornery and mean and nasty, and we sold him into slavery. He's gone, hallelujah. No. Did they say he was dead? No. What did they do? They take his coat of many colors, and what do? They're like, this is what we found, Dad. Right? And then they leave their father to draw his own conclusion. Don't we do all these things? Isn't this kind of part and parcel of sometimes what happens to us when we get caught in a very tight place? Lying isn't it a hard sin to avoid? And yet as Christians, we're supposed to be girded about with truth. Our belt is defined as being truthful. Now, for us, when I'm well-intentioned, when my heart's in the right place, when I'm not necessarily afraid in the way Abraham was, what do you think motivates us to lie?
Pride can be part of it.
Pride? Sometimes, you think about it, not every lie has dire consequences, does it? Is it one of the 10 Commandments not to lie? Is there a commandment that says, thou shalt not lie? How many people think we've got that commandment in the Old Testament? It doesn't really say that. What does it say? Shall not bear false witness, which is, what does it mean to bear false witness? In what circumstance? Bearing false witness, that's a legal term, isn't it? Right? If somebody gets on the witness stand and lie, what kind of harm do they cause? It can be quite extreme. It can cost people their life, right? Depending on whatever the lie that's told, I can deprive people of their property. You remember when Naboth had the vineyard, and Ahab looked and wanted the vineyard, and he was sick because Naboth wouldn't sell the vineyard. And what does Jezebel do? Pays off a couple of people who lie about Naboth, and Naboth is put to death. And so Naboth loses his life, and King Ahab takes the vineyard. When people lie on the witness stand, what do we call that? Perjury. Is perjury prosecuted? Not very often. People lie on the witness stand all the time. When I was a trial lawyer and somebody told the truth, I was often so stunned I hardly knew what to do. Because I completely expected everybody to lie. Once upon a time, people put their hand on the Bible, and they swore to tell the whole truth, right? What was behind that oath? Held accountable by who? What did they believe? What did they believe in the Middle Ages would happen if they swore on the Bible, God's word, to tell the truth, and then they lied? They're going to die, right? That's a pretty powerful motivation to tell the truth. People don't believe any such thing in the modern world. People lie all the time. The law of Moses was pretty clear. If I lied and somebody died because of my lie, what happened to me? I put to death. If I lied and deprived somebody of their property, what happened to me? I was deprived of my property. People don't prosecute perjury very much. There are some extraordinary circumstances where people are prosecuted for perjury, but people get on the witness stand and they lie an awful lot. Not to bear false witness. It's because of the consequences. That is a malicious kind of evil, right? But not every lie is like that, is it? Now, the Old Testament does say that I'm not to lie. In the book of Leviticus, not only am I not to bear false witness, I'm not to lie. So it is covered. It's just, we tend to think that thou shalt not lie is one of the 10 Commandments. No, I'm not to bear false witness. That's the most extreme form of lying, is what's covered in the 10 Commandments. But it is covered in the book of Leviticus. I'm not to lie, period. And what does the New Testament say about lying? Where are all liars going to end up? In the lake that burns with fire and brimstone, right? Revelations 21 and verse 8. So lying is covered from A to Z. But not all lying has the same consequences. Not all sin has the same consequences. If I take my gun and shoot you with malice aforethought and you die, the consequence of that sin is much greater than if I lie about how big the fish was that I caught, or how many points there were on the buck. Craig?
Bob Herman used to teach about the 10 Commandments, that what's covered is the zenith of the sin. Thou shalt not kill or murder. But he would take you through anger and hatred in its smallest form, and then it can grow into this big thing. And like, lust, sexual lust is covered in the New Testament. As you look at a woman, you would lust in your heart. You sin. Versus the commandment is, to lie with the woman.
So
Adultery.
Jesus goes to the heart of the problem, doesn't he? Right? So in the Old Testament, I'm not supposed to commit adultery, but Jesus says what about adultery? If I look at a woman with lust in my heart, I've done what? Now, is that the same thing as sleeping with somebody? I heard one of my teachers at Florida College many years ago was asked if that was cause for adultery, and he paused for a minute and said, I hope not. It's not the same because the consequences are different. But what do I know? If I accept the fact that to lust for a woman is the same thing as adultery, and that it's going to lead to the same place, what's going to happen? What will my attitude be? I'm going to avoid it. I'm going to be horrified by it. I'm going to realize if I'm looking at a woman and I'm starting to lust after her, That's a sin, and I want to be horrified properly by sin, and so I put that sin out of my life, and guess what is going to happen if I act that way? Am I ever going to commit adultery? No. No. So yes, I think that is a good point, Craig. When you look at what's covered in the Ten Commandments, he's dealing with the extreme forms of all of these sorts of things. Jesus deals with the heart. And so if I have the right heart, I'm not going to commit adultery. And if I have the right heart, I'm not going to lie. Now, we've taken the most extreme form of lying, people who get on the witness stand in suborn perjury. That is to say, somebody's paid them off or given them an incentive to lie on the witness stand. What's the most innocuous form of lying that you can think of?
Santa Claus.
Some people might argue with that, but how about when your wife comes in and says, "Honey, do I look fat in this dress?" There are innocuous forms, and I'm talking about innocuous in terms of the consequences, right? We went out fishing and I caught 20 fish, and really what I caught was 10. You know, they used to talk about the preacher's count at the meeting, you know, how they'd look out in the audience and say, we had 1,500 people and the building only holds 750. So there are forms of lying that are more innocuous in terms of their consequences than if I bear false witness. If I get on the witness stand and I lie, or if I gossip about somebody maliciously, right? This happens a lot in our culture. Or if I make up stuff and I put it on the internet, and I lie as a result of that kind of thing. But as a Christian, I want to avoid all lying. Why? Why do I want to even avoid innocuous stuff that seems minor?
Is there any time when lying might be justified?
Well, if you ask me, and I'm the one doing the lying, there's lots of situations.
Like, the Underground Railroad, say, authorities come to your house and say, are you harboring any escaped slaves? And you say, no, you have a well, they say, we're going to search. And you have a well-hidden room, and they don't find any slaves.
So one of the question is it ever okay to lie? You know, you have Nazis at your door, and you're hiding some people the Nazis are looking for, and is it okay to say, I'm not harboring anybody? Well, one of the things we know typically is in those situations what's going to happen. When I say, no, me, harbor any fugitives? You must be joking. They're going to accept my opinion and they're just going to trot off. They're going to say, well, you know, Terry said no. I guess that's it. What are they likely to do? They're going to barge into the house, search the house anyway, right? So one of the things I have to be careful about is when I'm telling the lie, I think that I know what the result of the lie is going to be, and it may not be the case. Now, having said that, the law of self-preservation in the Bible usually trumps some sort of legalistic definition of whatever, right? So for example, David, when he's on the run, eats the showbread, and the showbread can only be eaten by who? It can only be eaten by the priest. But David's not a priest, is he? But he eats the showbread, and it says he ate the showbread for which it was not lawful for him to eat, and yet what happened? It was all right because the law of self-preservation trumped the law about the bread. So, I guess what I'm trying to say is, it's often hard to know what's going to happen as a result of a lie. But there could, in my mind, be situations where, you know, maybe there's something greater going on, and so I'm not going to be held accountable for that particular event. But we got to be careful about it because we always think when we're telling a lie that there's a good reason. And we've got to be very, very cautious because we sort of go down the slippery slope if we're not careful, and things just don't end up like we think they're going to end up. And then what happens when I'm found out? So my number one rule as a Christian is going to be don't lie. Try to find a way to always tell the truth, to always be truthful. And sometimes that just means I don't answer every question that I'm asked. Right? We sometimes feel in our culture, if somebody asks the question, well, I've got to provide the answer. No, sometimes I'm just not going to answer the question. It's not something that I care to discuss. Right? Tim, did you have a...
Oh, I was just thinking about Rahab and the spies. How she could see how the hand of God was working through Israel coming through, and she saved the spies. And she deceived the messengers who came from the king. She saved her household and the spies.
So Tim's pointing out the example of Rahab and the spies, which this would sort of kind of fit the scenario we're talking about. Well, we want to be really, really careful because we tend to think that the exceptions then let in us to do whatever we want to when it comes to telling the truth. And we don't want to go there.
Part of what I think about when you think about lying in these situations, who am I thinking about? Most of the time we're lying is because we're worried about us.
Yeah.
We're worried about us profiting or losing something or having to suffer something. And in a situation like Judy was talking about the Underground Railroad or the Jewish, people hiding, people were thinking about how can I save these people? This is wrong. To me, it's like consider others better than yourself. Treat others the way you want to be treated.
So Tim's pointing out that perhaps one of the keys is what's our motivation. We know what Abraham's motivation was, right? He wanted to protect himself. That's the thing that's driving him. But sometimes people lie without any motive at all. They just lie because they think it's fun, or they lie because they think it's entertaining, or they lie for lots of reasons. They think whatever they're saying is innocuous, or I'm not lying, it's just hyperbole, or it's not really a lie, it's just a small fib. Or it's not a bad lie, it's just a white lie. And we just often go down a slippery slope, and then we have a lot of trouble remembering which lies that I told, right? One lie leads to another, and then we end up in a lot of difficulty. And what do we see in the life of Abraham? We see him setting an example for his son, his grandchildren, and his great-grandchildren. And that example is, and of course in every case, we know these lies are generated by selfishness, right? Jacob deceives his father. Why? He wants the blessing. There's something that he wanted. There's something that he valued. And he's valuing something that's a good thing to value. His brother doesn't seem to put any value on spiritual things. But I don't have to do evil that good may come. This is where we get into trouble. And so often what happens is it's an ultimate lack of faith in God that drives us into lying. We don't think God's going to be able to take care of the situation, so we're going to help God out. And whenever we help God out, we create all kinds of problems. And we're going to see this happen more than once in the life of Abraham. He thinks he's helping God out, and Abraham creates all kinds of problems. God doesn't need our help. So we want to be careful as Christians. We want to have the right attitude about things. What's the best way, by the way, if you find yourself with a problem with honesty, what can you do to solve the problem? Pray. Tell the truth, right? If I find myself in a conversation with Craig Hill, and I walk away and I go, you know what I told him wasn't true, and now I go back to Craig and say, you know, Craig, I was just thinking about that conversation, and I told you X, but that's a lie. I'm so sorry. I won't do that again.
Zach had a mechanical ed teacher in middle school. Zach said he was famous for he would tell people, just stop. They were doing something wrong, and he would just say, just stop. Sometimes sin is, it's embedded, and it's like, grown up in you or whatever, but it does come down to just stop.
So if I find myself in a situation where lying is a problem for me, my motivation for stopping is I'm going to tell the truth every time I find myself in that situation. And if I've got to go back and tell somebody that I lied, what kind of problem does that cause for me? It's a motivation not to lie, because in our culture, if I call you a liar, that's considered to be just a horrible thing to call somebody. Now, if I say, you misrepresented me, I can get by with that. Although lie is a much shorter word and it's easier to spell than misrepresent. And it's more accurate, right? But if I find myself dealing with this problem and I lie to someone, and then I say, I pray God for forgiveness and strength to go do the right thing, and then I go tell that person, I'm so sorry, but I lied to you. When I said X, it wasn't true. And I apologize, and it's not going to happen again. You don't have to do that too many times before you're going to find it a lot easier to tell the truth. All right. Christians, therefore, stand firm, therefore, having girded about your loins with the truth. Ephesians 6:14. All liars, their part will be in the lake that burns with fire and brimstone, which is the second death. Revelations 21:8. It is part of the Old Testament, right? I don't want to bear false witness. I don't want to lie in any way, shape, or form. I want to tell the truth at all times, and then I won't have to remember what I said. So this is one of the lessons I think that we take from the life of Abraham. Lying, it's everywhere. David himself writes in the Psalms, I said in my haste, all men are liars. And somebody said, maybe he wasn't so hasty. It's something I think as Christians we have to work on, because we live in a culture where people, I think, lie all the time, and lying is accepted, although calling somebody a liar is not accepted. And finally, remember that whatever example you're setting, your children, grandchildren, and maybe even your great-grandchildren are going to follow that example. And we want to set the right example, we want to live godly lives, and we want to be like Christ wants us to be. Tell the truth. And realize I don't have to answer every question. It's not about me hurting somebody's feelings about how they look or how they appear or whatever it might be. But we sometimes need to have those conversations, right? If I have a spouse who's constantly asking that kind of question, you have a conversation and say, that's not a question you should be asking me. All right. That's it for today. We'll take up again with Abraham next Sunday.